I live for the weekends. There's nothing quite like losing myself in the music, shedding the stress of the work week as I hit the dance floor. For me, Friday night is freedom, a time to shake off every worry, let the bass pulse through my bones, and just be. The lights, the rhythm, the energy of the crowd, it's my escape. I go out every weekend, blending into the throng of people all moving in sync, strangers connected by a shared beat. But that Friday night was different. That night, something noticed me. It started with a feeling, a faint prickling at the back of my neck, like I was being watched. At first, I brushed it off, focusing on the music and the crowd around me. But as the minutes passed, the feeling grew stronger, heavier, making it impossible to ignore. I glanced around, searching the dark corners of the club, looking for whoever or whatever was watching me. And then, there, among the blur of moving bodies, lights, and shadows, something stood out. It didn't move, didn't sway to the music like everyone else. It was just there, motionless, staring straight at me. From where I was, it looked almost like a man, but there was something terribly wrong about him. His figure was hazy, almost blending into the lights, like he was halfway there and halfway somewhere else. Curiosity overcame my unease, and I tried to push through the crowd, edging closer. My heart was hammering louder than the bass as I moved toward him, weaving between the dancers who seemed oblivious to my mission. When I was finally close enough, I stopped, frozen by what I saw. He wasn't just standing there. He was scarred, deformed beyond belief. His skin was twisted and burnt, patches of charred flesh clinging to his face like melted wax. Part of his chest was exposed, the flesh blackened, smeared with dried blood. His clothes were torn and scorched, hanging in tatters as if he'd been pulled from a fire. But it was his face, the horror of his face, that held me in place. His features were distorted, like a nightmare come to life, with eyes sunken deep into his skull, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I blinked, half convinced that I was seeing things, that maybe the stress of the week was playing tricks on my mind. Maybe I needed to splash some cold water on my face, snap myself out of it. But before I could move, he was suddenly right in front of me. I hadn't even seen him step forward. He was just there, inches away, his hollow gaze locked onto mine. "It will happen," he whispered, his voice like a gust of smoke, raspy and haunting. And in a blink, he was gone. The music pounded on, oblivious. The crowd kept dancing, unaware of the terror that had just gripped me. I could still smell him, the thick, acrid stench of burnt flesh lingering in the air like a dark omen. I stumbled to the bar, my hands shaking as I tried to process what I'd just seen, what I'd just felt. I couldn't shake the image of him, or the dread that had settled like a stone in my chest. I ordered a drink, something strong, hoping it would help me steady my nerves. But as I sipped, my mind couldn't stop replaying the sight of him. The warped face, the charred skin, those hollow, dead eyes staring right into me. It was as if he'd emerged from some forgotten corner of reality, something so horrifyingly impossible that my mind resisted it. But the smell lingered, and the memory of his whisper echoed. "It will happen." My pulse quickened with a dreadful anticipation, and I wondered who, what he was, and why he had chosen me to see him. What was about to happen, and why had he come to warn me? Desperate to clear my head, I went and sat beside a speaker, letting the vibrations try to drown out the lingering fear. But as I sat there, I heard something strange, crackling, faint yet unmistakable, coming from the back of the speaker. I turned and saw sparks, small, but real, flaring among the tangle of wires. And in an instant, his words came rushing back. "It will happen." A sick, cold realization hit me. I bolted up and ran to the DJ booth, pushing through the dancers as I tried to shout over the music. "There's a fire!" I screamed, desperately signaling the DJ to cut the music. People around me were beginning to notice, alarm spreading through the crowd. Panic erupted as everyone surged toward the exits. I barely remember how I got out. I remember the thick, dark smoke filling the club, the heat licking at my skin, the sound of terrified voices all around me as people fled. Flames devoured the place within minutes, reducing it to a blazing inferno. I stood outside, gasping for air, watching in horror as the building burned down before my eyes. No one was hurt, thankfully, but the police later chalked it up to an electrical fire, a tragic accident caused by faulty wiring, they said. No mention of the man, no mention of what I'd seen. But I couldn't forget him. I couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't just been a hallucination, that he'd shown himself to me for a reason. Was he a warning? An omen? Or was he something else entirely? Something lurking in the shadows, hiding in the crowd, waiting for just the right moment to reveal himself? I haven't seen him since that night. But every time I go out, every time I step onto a crowded dance floor, I can't help but wonder if he's still there, watching from the shadows, waiting for the next moment to strike. Until